Bledsoe was arrested.
Patrick Montgomery was in court.
Jonathan Manapa will stay in federal custody.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. So 51-year-old Texas resident and Navy veteran Matthew DaSilva had received numerous commendations during his time in the military. But on January 6th, he was on the wrong side of the law. DaSilva was seen amongst a large mob. They surged past officers onto the lower West Terrace. And the prosecutor explained that there was a temporary door that was located on that terrace. And DaSilva thought that the police would use that door to try to reach the plaza to provide backup for the other officers. So DaSilva barricaded the door with his body and with a flag. They said, quote, DaSilva remained at the door for several minutes, straining to push a flagpole against the outside of the door while other rioters leaned on him from behind to support his efforts. And one of the other members of the mob yelled that there were officers indeed behind that door and that they were, quote, trying to come out to tear gas. So sometime after that, DaSilva opened the door and he ascended the staircase inside and he made his way to the upper level of that terrace where they say he was watching while other people were violently attacking the police. Now, eventually, DaSilva made his way to the tunnel. That was the lower West Terrace tunnel where all that egregious violence went down. And he was seen on video participating in one of those heave-ho pushes, the collective push against the police. So while after that, DaSilva maneuvered to the front of the police line, I should say, and he lowered his head and he used his full body weight to push against an officer's riot shield. So the officer tried to deploy pepper spray to stop him, but DaSilva swatted at the officer and he hit his hand. Then DaSilva grabbed the edges of the shield that that officer was holding. He tried to rip it away from the officer. So the officer stumbled. When he stumbled, he lowered his shield and, as he was pulled off balance by DaSilva. And as a result, because his shield went down along with him, another officer happened to be struck in the head at that same moment by a drawer that someone else in the mob threw at the police. And after DaSilva stopped pushing, he hung around the tunnel for a while. He was taunting the officers. He was threatening them. He said things like, quote, "It's time for a very simple risk-reward scenario." So DaSilva ultimately backed off, but he remained on the Capitol grounds, they said, for about another half hour or so. And then DaSilva was arrested on July 13th of 2021. And in a superseding indictment, he was charged with assaulting officers, civil disorder, entering a restricted building or grounds, 2 counts of disorderly conduct, and 2 counts of physical violence. DaSilva refused a plea deal. He opted for a bench trial. And in July of 2023, he was convicted on all counts with the exception, for some reason, of disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds. Seems pretty obvious, but I don't know. Anyway, Trump-appointed judge in this case partially reversed his decision in February of this year, February of 2024, because DaSilva filed a motion and he argued that he wasn't aware that the vice president was on the Capitol grounds when he was doing all this, when he, walked onto restricted grounds and committed crimes. So he couldn't have known that the grounds were restricted. Because remember, they were restricted that day because you had people like the vice president on the Capitol grounds, and therefore, because of Secret Service and obviously the threats to the country, it is restricted. Now, unfortunately, this is an issue that's come up before, and the higher courts haven't issued a ruling yet, so we don't have a definitive answer as to whether defendants have a requirement of knowledge, like meaning whether or not it matters that they knew that the vice president was there or not. So we'll have to see how the upper courts rule on this eventually. But this judge basically gave this guy a pass. He dropped 3 of the misdemeanor convictions because of that, which all involve the restricted grounds charges. So things like entering a restricted building or grounds, disorderly conduct on restricted grounds. It didn't change much, though, because based on just the assault conviction, DaSilva was facing up to 8 years in prison, 5 years of probation, and $250,000 in fines. Now, the prosecutor requested 52 months in prison, 3 years of probation, and $2,000 in restitution. And in a statement to the court, DaSilva wrote that he, quote, never intended to hurt any officer or inflict any kind of harm. And he said, quote, I am an introvert and I am easily overpowered by a lot of stimuli. I had a very difficult time processing that day. I have a very, very difficult time with a lot of noise. There was a lot of noise and chaos. I don't have an explanation for why I stayed there. I came there alone and I trusted the crowd, people I didn't know. I respect police officers. Obviously, if I could do this all over again, I would not have remained in that chaos and I wouldn't have interacted with the officers. I would have just gone home. It's a hard lesson. I deeply regret putting my hands on that shield. The man who you saw in that video is not who I am and not who I want to be. And according to the prosecutor, DaSilva isn't your run-of-the-mill January 6th defendant. He is highly educated. He speaks multiple languages. He was actually a cryptologic technician, interpreter during his 12 years in the Navy. But, you know, if you have those issues, which it sounds like maybe he's on the spectrum, why would you go there in the first place? You know how many thousands of people were expected. They thought millions. But anyway, DaSilva claims when he got home, he fell into his wife's arms. He started crying. He was full of remorse. He said he cut off his hair, he shaved his face, and he started devoting his time to things that matter, like his wife. So DaSilva's attorney, on the other hand, is a BLM deflector who basically argued that the violent left-wing protesters haven't been punished, so her client shouldn't be punished. Yeah, someone's been watching too much Fear News Network, right? She also knew her audience because, like I said, this is a Trump-appointed judge. Judge Carl Nichols presided over DaSilva's case. He is of a similar mindset, so she definitely was, you know, playing to her audience. And it appeared to work somewhat. In the end, he was sentenced DaSilva to only 28 months in prison and 6 months of probation. So that's it. As far as I know, no fine, no restitution. There was no mention of that. And DaSilva is going to receive credit for the 9 months that he's already been in prison since his conviction. Now, you know, compare that to the 6-year sentence that was handed down in the John Sullivan case, which I'm going to cover. You know, a left-winger to which DaSilva's attorney was referring. Yeah. The difference is Sullivan didn't lay a hand on the police, and he's not a Trump supporter. He wasn't there to stop the certification of the election. So DaSilva gets 1/3 the amount of time behind bars, and his attorney wants to whine about partiality towards the left. Yeah, because that makes sense. Anyway, I will let you know if I hear any more. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Please like this video, share it, become a subscriber if you have not. If you can donate, truly appreciate it. Love you all. Take care. Talk with you soon.